I'm Ben Morton Wright. I'm the founder and group CEO of Global Philanthropic, which is a company I established in Hong Kong over 20 years ago. And it's an international company working across philanthropy in the thought leadership and convening space. I've known about CAPS really since it was formed and have been always hugely impressed with CAPS and got to know it from the early stages when the philanthropic marketplace was beginning to really be examined in Asia. And having lived in Hong Kong and established businesses in Hong Kong, I was very aware of the potential, but we never really had any data until CAPS arrived on the true potential across Asia, not just Hong Kong, and specifically China, which is of enormous interest to us. And we worked a lot in China. And to see the stats and the actual materials are based on really amazing research on the trends in China as being very, very important. So that's really how I first came aware of it, really, was the research output. Yeah, you use them extensively, and we promote CAPS work whenever we can because it's so good. I think the Doing Good Index is a very, very important report because Asia has its own philanthropic story, and it's a very long story. And I think what's very smart about the approach to doing good is that it's trying to take an all-encompassing view about philanthropic mobilization. It doesn't just see it in terms of the giving analysis, which maybe in the US is what you hear about. It's actually a wider view about lots of different ranges, so a number of enterprises, the approach to philanthropy, the social context of philanthropy, how philanthropic different countries are. So it gives a much wider context to the story of philanthropy in Asia, which I think is really important to describe. And it also, I believe, and has in the past, looked at different levels of giving, and if they were at different standards, what that would mean for the sector, and also looked at issues around trust and issues that are very important to the development of the non-profit sector across Asia. Yeah, I mean, the specific reports around education and health, the fact that they are done in different languages is very important, Chinese in particular. I think is really striking. There's been very limited analysis because it's incredibly complex and very difficult to establish what is happening across Asia, but particularly in China. And I think the analysis within China and the trends within China have been most helpful. So I think what is really surprising is the depth of the analysis and the depth of knowledge that's brought to the surface with those reports, those very sector-specific reports. So we use them extensively in terms of referencing, and I also think people always say, well, Asia's talked about in terms of the next philanthropic frontier, which is unlocking and is developing, which it certainly is. Now tell me actually what are the stats, prove it to me. And to be able to have an organization that you can point towards and specific reports of such quality, is a game changer, because you can then say, actually, look, here's the evidence. And so for those that maybe don't quite believe what's going on, or maybe are slightly cynical about what's going on, you actually have got a point of reference to say, this is what's going on and this is fact. And that's what good research is about. I think the other point, which I think is really interesting, is that you then start tracking it. So obviously the COVID period was a particular period, and CAPS has been brilliant at tracking the impact of that. And some of it not all positive. There's been some negative outfallings from COVID, albeit when COVID was in full action across the world. Being able to know how Asia responded in terms of philanthropy is super important. So, having a reality check on if things are going down, as well as issues around trust, for example, that have been discussed extensively, are based on research, not just based on hearsay or, I think it's going like this, is really, really critical. So the research development is super important for our business as a point of reference, and is something personally I'm very supportive of. So I think this kind of work that CAPS does is critical. I think, what's particularly striking about CAPS is that it is philanthropically funded, and has taken, and because of that, has a base of donors which span Asia. I mean, predominantly, obviously, it's born out of Hong Kong through the inspiration of one particular high net worth. But essentially now it's a forum that's funded by lots of high net worths that care about philanthropy. And I think, that brings a very powerful dynamic to its work, its authenticity of its work, the reliability of its work. And it is actually an organization that is a charitable organization. So its objectives are just to speak to the truth and to find the truth around philanthropy and to encourage and promote philanthropy. And I think it's utterly inspired. And I know obviously Ronnie Chan has been enormously influential in developing it, as well as Ruth. And it's been an amazingly powerful idea and concept, which has now really taken its roots. So for 10 years, it's achieved an enormous amount, and it's filled a vacuum, which frankly there wasn't anything there. I mean, there wasn't any university centers around philanthropy in Asia. There wasn't really, apart from Tsinghua, there was some research around family offices. But, when I founded Global Philanthropic over 20 years ago, there was no research really that you could point to of any credibility that could guide you to what was happening across Asia. Again, very, very important, to acknowledge that this is a sizable research operation doing very important work that's not just about China and Hong Kong, but is about the whole Asia ecosystem. Absolutely, without hesitation, I would recommend CAPS because they are the research organization for Asia on philanthropy. Period. End of. There's no one else that gets near, in my view. So they are a critical source of reference. And I would always point towards CAPS. Analytical and mission critical. Sorry, that's 4 words, but I'm going to put mission critical around philanthropy. They are truthful, so you can rely on CAPS. A lot of concern at the moment is around data and can you rely on data? I absolutely trust what CAPS says, and that's not true in everything you read nowadays in the world. So, the analytical work that's done is second to none, and it uses the data to actually analyze what's going on and tell us what we need to tell us. And without that, it's very hard. You have a lot of data, but you don't know where it takes you. And I think the team's analytical abilities and the ability to point out where the pressure points are, where the policy changes need to, is very, very important and mission critical, because philanthropy can only develop if it's got points of reference of research. And this is very important. So Asian philanthropy can only really build, and it's a long, Asian philanthropy has a long history, but it's not been researched in the way that CAPS has. The last 10 years, we've shone a light on the magnitude of philanthropy that's happening in Asia, and it shows real potential. So it's mission critical because we can't do better philanthropy. We can't encourage philanthropy. We can't encourage capital flows if we don't have organizations that are researching and analyzing that research. So CAPS is mission critical for philanthropy, for the whole region and for the world, because what happens in Asia is going to have a huge impact for the world as well, and let's not underestimate that. Congratulations to CAPS and all those that founded it, that funded it, and the wisdom behind it. And it's been a phenomenal journey, and it's done phenomenal things in the last 10 years. It's now an integral part of the philanthropic landscape of the world and Asia. And congratulations to CAPS on everything that's been achieved. And I'm really excited about the next journey as we leap for the next 10 years. And I'm sure CAPS will be match fit and ready to service the huge developments that I think will be in the philanthropic space.